Kellfire Show. I'm Dr. Kelly Barron, and today my guest is Melissa Nanavati. And Melissa is a speaker, author, and relationship architect, which I love that name. I love that title, who helps high performers build thriving, peaceful relationships without sacrificing ambition. Drawing from neuroscience, biology, and her own journey, which is pretty fascinating, she teaches how to apply business skills to love. Her practical frameworks help high achievers create relationships that fuel peak performance. Well, Melissa, I'm so excited to have you on today. This is a really great topic, and it's a topic that I'm seeing more and more as we see this segment of women, roughly 45 to 64, becoming so prevalent in the media, in communications about menopause, perimenopause, work, entrepreneurs. So welcome, and please give us a little about your background.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. I was really looking forward to this conversation because a really large segment of my coaching clients are exactly what you just described. They've been previously married, they're back in the dating world, navigating that, and there's admittedly some fear when it comes to navigating this process. And so backing up to kind of my own background, despite having a lot of early career success, I was a best-selling textbook author by the time I was in my mid-20s. I had my own business for 8 years, and I honestly struggled so much in the dating world. I went on over 100 first dates before I met my husband. Well over 100.
100 first dates.
Over.
Okay, everybody wants to know right now.
Yes.
With 100 first dates, how many were even like, that was a nice date?
I would say honestly, 30 to 40% of them were genuinely good people. But what I was learning through that process, and now the framework that I really help and share, not only with the people I work one-on-one with, but through the book I'm currently co-authoring with my husband called Peak Performance Love, is all about how to develop a lot of clarity when it comes to what we're looking for. Because I find that people fall into one of two categories. Either you have this super specific list that has some superficial things in it, like has to be over 6 feet tall, make a certain amount, right? All of those things. Or people don't make a list at all. So the problem with that, and what I discovered through my own dating journey, was that not having really clear list of exactly what I was looking for when it came to character values, lifestyle values, and just a couple non-negotiables is what allowed me to be much more discerning in the dating process. So to your question of, what happened to those nice guys at 30 to 40%? Well, what I found was that they didn't meet those lists of qualifications that would actually make for long-term success in a relationship. Someone simply being kind is not enough in many cases when you are a high performer. There are certain things like being growth-oriented that I think all high-performing women should have on their list, or at least someone who can really respect the growth and pace of your life.
I 100% agree with that statement. I think if you don't have someone that matches your fire, and not necessarily in the sense of a career, but matches your fire in something they're trying to achieve, that could be a big cause for resentment, negativity, things to fall apart. So I love that you just said that. I think that's really, really important.
It's been so powerful too. And the people that I've worked with, what I've discovered is that there's actually a framework that I give people to go through it, and I'll give you kind of the brief of that, which is really identifying just 2 to 3 core character values or traits that you need in a partner. So for example, this could be something like loyalty, growth-oriented, generous. And I find especially with women that are particularly generous themselves, having generosity on that list is really important.
So important.
And that doesn't necessarily mean financial generosity, right? Are they generous with emotions? Are they generous with how they treat you in general? And so having that kind of core list and not getting hyper fixated on the superficial or getting hyper fixated on something that is simple like hobbies, having the same hobbies. Because for example, my husband is literally the ultimate outdoorsman. I am a self-described indoor girl. But our shared value is that we're both adventurous. We're just adventurous in different ways. And the truth is that our hobbies tend to change every 5 to 10 years, especially as high performers. So if you pick someone based on they also like pickleball or they also like to dance, which was mine for a while, you're not actually setting yourself up for long-term success necessarily, because that's not a character trait. So focusing in really specifically on what are those couple of characteristics that would be key, and realizing that attraction is something that you can build and create. And that, I think, is one of the most powerful reframes. And that gets us away from the superficial things like must be a certain height, all of those things that really shift and evolve as we age.
No, I agree with that. And that's so true that you said that, like the hobbies, like things like that, they do change, and they change frequently. We think, no, we're always this or always that. I liked how you did pickleball. But you're right, they change. And I think sometimes they evolve as well, like you said, with your partner, that you tend to have maybe not mutual, but the same sort of passion for something different. Exactly. But you still have that same sort of passion. So that sort of fills that bucket for you.
Yeah. Yes. And then the other category is really lifestyle values. So are you somebody who enjoys travel? Is travel part of your world? Do you want kids? Do you already have kids? And really making sure you're aligned on some of the lifestyle things that are going to matter more, because you do not have to be the exact same as your partner. And I think that's one of the common traps that I see a lot of people that have come out of divorce. They're like, well, I need to find someone way more like me. The truth is, you need to find someone who's way more aligned on how they handle conflict, on how they handle life and their approach. I think one of the biggest green flags to look for, especially if you're dating after divorce, is somebody who is open to feedback. I think that is the number one value to look for, and is a determinant of real success, because even if you are very different about certain things, for example, my husband and I completely different about how we handle money. He thinks pouring all your money into crypto is the way to invest. Big win, big reward. I love my 401k, and I used to spend in a way like I expected a recession to happen every year. And where we were able to make that work is we're both really open to feedback. And so we evolved the way that we spend, and we were able to come to alignment. So we didn't have to be aligned out of the gate. But if someone's truly open to feedback, you can make a lot of things work really well.
Oh, absolutely. And that's pretty funny with this spending too, because I see that a lot. I have, and it's interesting that you guys were able to find that common ground with that, and that you're right. I would say, as we're going into the second relationship, second half of our life, we're looking for more peace and just some more calm, and communication is about the only way you're going to get it in a situation like that. Well, women 45 to 64 make up the fastest growing segment of entrepreneurs now, and that warms my heart.
I love it. As a fellow entrepreneur, I love it.
Right. But also, divorce in that age group is on the rise in women. What are you seeing with that? What do you think is happening in respect with that?
I think there's two things happening. The first is that we're seeing a lot of more of what I like to call asymmetrical growth in relationships. So what I'm finding with a lot of the couples that end up splitting a little later in life is that one partner is growing much faster than the other, and it's creating friction. And it's creating friction not because you have to grow at the same pace as your partner, but because we're not adept at communicating what that means and communicating through that process. The second piece is that we're not actually giving people oftentimes the opportunity to rise to the occasion. And what I mean by that is many times what I find, especially in working with couples that are considering splitting, whether it's they're married or together, and I'll do this couple calibration method, is that there's a lot of unspoken needs, and there's a lot of unspoken frustration and what I like to call energy leaks in the relationship. So there are really 4 core muscles that I like to talk about of relational courage that, if practiced consistently, can help a lot of couples navigate through some of these challenges, and it doesn't always have to end in a breakup. So the 4 types of relational courage are: the first is the courage to be vulnerable. This means simply sharing what's actually on your heart and mind. The second,
how hard is that for a high-performing female?
Very hard.
Very
And understandably, because it's not always received well. And so It's a practice and a muscle to build. And I believe all of this is not something you have or don't have. I believe every skill in love is just that, a skill that can be developed. And that first one is the courage to share vulnerably. The second is the courage to ask what your partner needs from you. The third is to ask for what you need from your partner, which I find is actually the hardest one, typically for women.
Yes.
And the fourth is the courage to bring up issues to be addressed in the relationship. Now, if you're doing all four of these consistently, I often find that if they do need to split, it might just be a misalignment in core values. But a lot of times we're not giving people the opportunity to make the changes because we assume that they don't have the capacity to do what we need or want. But the key is with the needs piece, and this is where people get stuck. I was actually just working with a couple on this, and the wife had said, I just want you to make our daughter and I feel protected when we're traveling. And so I drilled down a little deeper because that's a very fair need, but what specific action does your partner need to take? And when we got a little more specific, it was so simple. She simply wanted her husband to keep track of the daughter's roller bag when they were going through the airport because she gets too frazzled.
Oh.
That was it.
But
when we don't have that clarity, but we don't have that clarity because she had to think for a moment, what does it mean to make us feel protected? She just knew she felt unsafe when they were traveling and she felt like she was doing everything. But when I got her to get specific, him doing that one action made a world of difference and softened all the other parts of frustration she was experiencing in their travel.
Wow. That's like this was the most simple thing. But of your 4 steps, though, I can see where those could be, especially in women, being vulnerable, asking what your partner needs. Because I would feel this is a little controversial, but I feel that a lot of women in midlife get to this stage where their brains are just I've taken care of you, I've served your needs, and I say served in a loving way, but I've served your needs, and I've served the needs of the children. I've given, and elderly parents if you have, and I've given everything of myself to you. Why do I still have to ask you what you need? Shouldn't it be what I need? Which goes to your third, which is really hard. Yes, because women don't, there's a whole, there's a whole ball of emotions with that. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to be ashamed. I never ask for anything for myself anyway, or I don't know how. All of those right there I can see. And then I can see how working with someone like you, breaking it down into something so simplistic as just watch the roller bag, could change the dynamic.
And those little shifts, oftentimes what I've found is that when we get frustrated with our partner, when we get frustrated in the dating process or someone we've been with for a long time, there's a buildup. And now what we are doing is we are orienting ourselves to everything they're not doing. We start to forget the little things they are, which is why one of the other routines that I always encourage couples, especially people who've been married a long time, is a 5-minute ritual at the end of every single day. 5 minutes, that's all it takes. Doesn't matter if you're in the same room, doesn't matter, have to be over a phone call, whatever it may be, your partner's traveling, you're traveling, and take 5 minutes to acknowledge each other and express appreciation for everything the other person did for you that day.
That's good.
And this made a huge difference, not only in my own marriage, like this is a non-negotiable end of the day. And if you don't know what your partner did for you, and I find a lot of times, to your point, women are giving a lot that goes unseen. And the way to become seen and start to feel appreciated for that so that they can even ask, what else do you need, is to start by being appreciated. And the way that I always suggest couples do this is to use the question, what can I acknowledge you for today? And both people asking that gives the other person to say, hey, I put away the dishes you didn't see. I went and picked up the kids, when you didn't show up, or whatever that may be. And then your partner not just saying thank you, but repeating back, thank you for, and repeating back everything you just said makes a world of difference. Because a lot of times, especially for women, we're feeling unseen. We're feeling unappreciated for the work that we're doing. So starting with that gratitude ritual and then setting up some sort of either routine or ritual once a week, asking your partner, what is one thing I can do for you this week that would help you feel supported, versus feeling like you're taking on the world. And then in return, offering one thing that they can do for you this week. And then you start to see those scales and the balance rebalance. Because it's not about being perfectly balanced all the time and how much you give and receive. There are different seasons of support. And that's something really important to realize. But if you're always in a season of supporting your partner and you haven't discussed what season you're in, that's when resentment starts to build.
How do you talk to your clients? I could see myself doing this. When you get to that 5-minute ritual, and let's say your partner is saying, these are all the great things that I've done for you today, and you didn't see them. And how do you counsel your clients from shutting their mouth and not coming back with something sarcastic, or, trying to make light of it, make a joke of it, and just kind of sit in the moment and say, okay, listen to what he just said. It may be this big, but it was something.
I always encourage people to approach having the conversation about creating this ritual of like, hey, I want to make sure we both are feeling seen and appreciated. So this time is sacred. I really want us to go into this conversation fully present, fully listening. And even if some of that frustration stirs a little when you're hearing them say it, pause and recognize that they are making an effort even in doing this activity with you. And this will become more natural, right? Like, to someone to agree to do this is a big deal. And that is an offer of love and showing that they care. Because the reason this is particularly powerful is not just feeling seen in that moment of saying, hey, these are the things I did, thank you. But it's really what it does is it orients you towards the positive. So just like gratitude journaling in the personal development world, now it makes you think through your day through the lens of what went right. Similarly, what I've discovered with couples over time is you start doing this for a week, 2 weeks. You start subconsciously noticing when they're doing things because you're thinking at the end of the day, I need to share and show appreciation. So now we're orienting ourselves towards the positive. Just like if you decide you want, say, a red Tesla. Now everywhere you drive, you suddenly see a red Tesla, right? This is the same concept. And so what we're doing is we're tricking our brain and our partner's brain to look for what's going right.
That's really important thing too, because more often than not, we only see, especially when we're hurrying, run around, getting to work, getting kids, whatever it is that you're doing, it's like tiny little things that you don't see, and you only look for the big things. And I would say this about women: we run around and do a million tiny things, and we start to feel like nobody notices and I'm doing all this work. But we should probably also be looking at our partner who is doing a bunch of little things. But because we're so focused about the big picture and get this one out and get this on time, that we're not looking at those little tiny things. So I think that that's a really cool ritual, a practice to do. Very vulnerable too.
It is. It absolutely is. And it will bring you closer than you can begin to imagine. And it's not just something I've used with my clients, myself. I have had the blessing and opportunity to interview some really high performing couples, some couples that work together in their business, some that don't, whose love has stood the test of time, 40 plus years. And they look like they're in their honeymoon phase. And I was like, what is your secret? What is it? And almost every single one of them have this ritual. This is one of those core rituals. Yes, it is the way that they navigate difficult conversations and this ritual of gratitude in some way. They may not do it in the, hey, here's all the things you did for me sort of way, but they have a consistent expression of appreciation for their partner every single day.
Yeah, I think that's something we should probably all incorporate. I think it's almost the same as like if you're training an animal, you're training your own brain. If I train myself to continually look for these little things and say the positive, it's going to just be natural. And at the same time, then your partner who gets this great feedback from you and feels seen, feels useful, appreciated, will start to do more. Probably. That's the theory in my brain.
Men love to feel useful. Men and women's brains are different in many ways. There's actually a lot of science about this. Even in the uterus, you can see like when a child is forming, actually based on the brain and what part of the brain is growing faster if it's a boy or girl. Our brains are actually different, which is wild and true. Yeah. Women have way more neural connections between the right and left hemisphere of the brain, which means we are able to see more of what's happening, all the details. That's why details tend to bother women more. And just the way we are wired is different. Now, it doesn't mean we can't adapt and grow. The brain is plastic. But understanding that, especially actually after childbirth, there's a lot of research about how women's brains develop even more neural connections between the right and left hemisphere. So they are able to better multitask than anyone on the planet. If you have had a child, your brain is different. And that's a beautiful thing and a gift. And the thing that I always remind people too is to see these things as superpowers. Because if we start looking at them as, why can't they do it? You know, that is the repeating thing I hear is, why is my husband not seeing this? Or why is my boyfriend not seeing this? Why do they leave it's a running joke in our household that my husband leaves little piles of things. And I'm super neat freak. And we call it the trail of husband, because he just leaves little piles and I always know where he's been. But it's a joke and we can be playful about it because our brains are just wired differently. My superpower is details. Now, it doesn't mean he doesn't have to participate, but if we can bring some levity to when we make our asks instead of frustration, if we can make jokes about it, play is one of those core values that keeps resentment from building.
Oh, I 100% believe that. You have to play, you have to have humor, and you have to be okay making fun of yourself too. Especially sometimes that's a really nice way of not admitting you're wrong. Just make fun of yourself, and it kind of you feel like I didn't have to admit I was wrong, but at the same time you're like I totally did that. Wasn't it funny?
Exactly. And I think, I always say there's 4 kind of core skill sets within what I like to call peak performance love, and that's the title of our upcoming book is really, the first one is courage. Courage is the core of everything, of bringing things up, the courage to go there, to have these harder conversations, the courage to share what you need. The second is curiosity. So when you can approach these moments of frustration and not assume you know what the other person's intentions were, if you can ask more questions and stay curious, it keeps it from becoming a fight. It keeps that moment from becoming a moment of friction. If you're saying, hey, is this how this was intended? And simply asking what their frame of reality is, what their thought process was behind it, because we start to, especially after we've been in a relationship for a while, assume we know how the other person thinks. But if you're able to stay curious about the other person, you're also now able to invite in more play, a little more laughter and levity into the moment. And then the last one is presence, just simply being present and really truly being there with your partner. If you practice all 4 of those, and we do this in our work lives, we do this as entrepreneurs, we do this as professionals, but bringing those skills home is how you create harmony.
I love those. The playfulness, I think it has to be there. I they always say you have to, at the core of it, you have to be best friends. I don't always think that has to be the core or the start of a relationship. I do think, though, that you have to grow to be each other's best friend at some point, and so the playfulness comes in there. The communication, everything that you've talked about is so important, and honestly, asking the question, that's a good one too. So how something was intended, and I know I'm guilty of this. If I see or hear something that's done and I either take offense or I'm annoyed by it or frustrated by it, I don't ask the question often, because then I'm scared, like, what is the response going to be? Or am I going to piss him off? Or, what is going to happen? So you don't ask the question. But women tend to overcomplicate it, I think, too. Like, oh, he's doing this and he meant that and da-da-da. And really he's just like, I was wondering where my blue shorts were and I said this. And so I think if we just looked at it as it's really important for the health of a relationship to not be afraid to speak up and say, did you really mean that? Or what did you mean by that? Would probably go a long way in stopping arguments.
Yes. And there are 2 phrases that I love to share with clients and people when I do a lot of speaking on this. The first is actually borrowed from Brene Brown, which is, the story I'm telling myself is. Say that before you explain, the story I'm telling myself is, when you don't take out the trash, it means you don't care about me. Can you help me rewrite that story?
That's a good prompt.
It's super helpful because it also reminds you that what your thoughts are not truth. Your thoughts are your story about what's happening. And one of the other phrases I love, and both my husband and I use this constantly, is saying the phrase, my lens of reality is. My lens of reality is. Because this does 2 things. First, it reminds you that, again, you're making up stories. This is simply the lens you're viewing reality through. The second is it indicates to your partner that you're open to being reframed. You're open to that not being true. And even when we're having hard conversations, we will hold hands, first of all, because that releases oxytocin and helps you downregulate. So if you're about to have a harder conversation or ask a question you're scared about, hold hands with your partner. It's small, it's simple, it reminds you you're on the same team. And from a biology standpoint, you're releasing oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. So it calms both of your nervous systems, and you can say, my lens of reality is that this means this. I would love to hear what your lens is.
That's really good. I think I love the hand holding because I personally think touch is key to so many things in a relationship. Sometimes, just a simple touch, like hand on top of hand or something like that, can diffuse emotion so quickly. So I do, though, think I would burst out laughing, though. I'd be like, I need to hold your hand because I need to talk about this right now. And then
And you can giggle. Giggle is totally fair and fun and lightens it even. You can even preface with saying, I'm not going to say this perfectly. And so
I love that. I love that.
Yes, I'm not going to say this perfectly, but I want you to help me rewrite the story I'm telling myself.
Love that. I love that. That's easily done. That's easily said, easily done.
Simple fixes. That's the whole goal of my work. And back to your question, or your statement rather, about being a relationship architect. For me, it's all about giving people frameworks and actionable tools. Whether or not you decide to work with me one-on-one or just consume content, my goal is to give people the exact blueprint, frameworks, tools, scripts to make these moments easier.
Yeah, you've already given me so many, and we've just been chatting for a little while. And I'm like, oh, that's good. Oh, I like that one. Use that one. Write that down.
And
what do you?
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say to your point about feeling afraid in these moments to maybe bring it up. One of the mantras that I love is fear is your compass. Because if it's something you are afraid to bring up, the moments you are leaning into that are when you're going to see the most measurable change in your relationship. And the truth is that emotions trap us in short-term thinking. When you're feeling that fear, you're thinking your body is designed and wired to just keep you safe, unless you become conscious of it. So our biology is wired to keep us safe. If we're feeling fear, that traps us in, how do we deal with this right now in the easiest way? We're not thinking long-term. So the more we can get out of short-term thinking and get into long-term thinking of what is my long-term goal in this relationship? Is my long-term goal to feel more harmony and peace? Then you can move through these moments of discomfort.
That's important, to look at the long term. That's really important. We get caught up too much in the here and now and don't focus on the long term whatsoever. What do you say to the group of women out there that are now midlife, whatever range we want to call that, and they are getting into dating for maybe not the first time, but maybe the first time in a really long time? And it's scary out there, and especially high achievers who are so critical of themselves, let alone how do I start dating and how do I find someone when I'm on this path and these are my goals? How do you discuss that?
Coming back to the beginning of our conversation, where I believe it really starts with getting that internal clarity, getting really crystal clear on what you're looking for before you ever step out into the dating world. And then looking at, are there any limiting beliefs that I have going into this that are preventing me from taking action? For example, there's no good men. No one can match me. Right? Any of these things that are coming up, and recognizing that these thoughts, while they may be based in some past experiences, are not truth. Our thoughts are not truth. You do not have to eradicate your limiting beliefs to take action, but know that there are good men out there. We just need clarity on exactly what we're looking for. And the right person, the person who is growth oriented, is going to be able to support you in being your full authentic self. When we try and water ourselves down, and I get it, I watered myself down on a lot of those of the 100+ first dates, but what we're doing is we're doing a disservice to the person in front of us and to ourselves. So the goal in dating is not to be the most popular person to date. The goal is to find that one person And the good thing is it only takes one person, right? You're not trying to be likable by everyone. If you're getting rejected a lot, good. It means that you're being authentic to who you are. We have to own exactly who we are if we want to find someone who can match us. And when we come from that place and really start to reframe our perception of there are no bad dates. Every date is an opportunity to practice a skill, get better at asking questions, right? And then you're not wasting your time. And yes, it can feel like you're wasting your time, but only if you're not approaching it as an opportunity to be a better date, to be a more authentic version of you. And that's what got me through the last 20 or 30 dates, I would say, before I met my husband, was that I started looking at it as an opportunity of what skill can I practice so that this time, especially as a high achiever, it doesn't feel wasted. And then you can get to a stage of operationalize it. One day a week, this is what I tell all my clients who are single, one day a week, go to a new event, whatever that event may be, where there are people that may have aligned values. So if you're someone who values health, look up a breathwork workshop, look up different health clubs, but one new event a week. Yes, you can do online dating, and I think that that's supplemental, but you end up getting trapped in the superficial because really what you're swiping on is based on attraction. Right. And so if you're getting into a new environment once a week and using that as your opportunity, not to hope that your person is there, but to practice connecting with people. And your goal needs to be to make 1 to 2 connections there, because you never know who could have a friend or who could know somebody that could be the right person. And that's actually how I met my husband. I attended a new event every week until I met him. He was not at the event. I connected with his friend who was the organizer, and I told his friend that I was looking for a man.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's where the honesty is, right? So our friends can't be our matchmakers if we don't have clarity and if we're not willing to be vulnerable, being like, hey, I'm looking for somebody. Use your network. Tap into the people you meet at these events, because if you are connecting with someone at an event, even if they're not single, even if they're the same gender as you, and you're not trying to date someone that's the same gender, that person may have a friend. And the more clear and more honest you get, the more people can set you up.
How long into the 100 dates did you get the courage to be like, I'm just going to announce what I'm here for? Or, to make it known that you were looking for someone? Did it take a while, or did you just commit to it right up front?
It took a while. I would say I would probably had been on like 90 plus dates at that point. And then I realized that I was only using dating apps. I actually worked with matchmakers. And then I started asking my friends to set me up once I got more clarity of exactly who I was looking for. And so when you have that clarity, then you can ask people, and that there is a huge vulnerability to that. But to this day, the organizer, the friend, Michael, who set up Akshay, my husband, and I, he tells the story all the time. So he runs a biohacking kind of center here in Scottsdale, Arizona, where people have like cold plunges, sauna, very health conscious people, usually pretty affluent, that go there. And he started telling people, the reason I worked so hard to set Melissa up with somebody was because she was direct. And I think if more of us were willing to be honest about the fact that we want a relationship, then we can start to set people up.
Why do we find that so taboo? Why do we find it so like, a shame and embarrassment to ask, or to just say, yeah, I'm in the market?
Because I think it shows the gap from where we are now and where we want to be. I think it activates a part of us that creates pain, because any goal without action creates pain. So if you say, I want a relationship, but you're sitting at home, you're going to feel pain and shame around it.
Oh, that's good. That is very good. Yes.
And I think that's part of the problem. And the more vulnerable we can be in that process, the quicker we can find our person. But make your goal when you're attending a new event every week, when you are getting in new spaces, to just simply connect. Because then you won't feel disappointed if you go to event after event and it's not them at the time. But like-minded people spend time with like-minded people. So if you're making new friends, because how many of us are actively making new friends? It's probably not very many.
No.
Exactly. No. Exactly. And so even just starting there will expand your world faster than you can imagine.
I honestly encourage everyone to seek out Melissa or someone like Melissa, because just this short time that we've talked, It's very hard at this age, and we're so stuck in, we're either growing into our new being, which a lot of women are doing right now as the children are leaving, and they're finally able to find out who this new version of themselves are, or we're so stuck in our ways and we're so scared that it's nice to have someone that's got, I'll call it a playbook, a guidebook, if you will, flashcards that you can like follow along. And obviously it's up to you, the individual, to act on the knowledge that you're giving them. But to have that, it makes it feel so much easier. So much like, oh, I can do that. Yeah, that's no problem. So I encourage everyone that feels like this, that this is big stuff. And it's big stuff in the sense that it can change your life, but there's such small, little, easy to do actions. It just takes courage. There's your word. Courage. I love that.
There's a lot of micro activities, and thank you for that as well, because truly, whether someone's a good fit to work with me, or whether that's just consuming what's free and available, or finding someone that's more aligned with you, my true mission is to help people find and experience the kind of love that expands who you are. And I think that that is really the ultimate goal, and what I describe as love is the acceptance of each other exactly as you are, but the feeling of expansion that arises as a result of your relationship. And I think this is especially true for high performers. And I just want everyone to know that you're using these skills already. These are skills you possess. To be in the position that you are in now, you already have these skills. My goal is to help you apply it to the most intimate part of your life.
But it makes sense. I'm in operations. And I'm like, yeah, that's what you do every day. That's operations 101. And then you're making me think like, well, if you can be good at that when it's not yourself personally, your love life on the line, or your relationship or your partner, why can't you learn and to be good at it? You're already good at it. Just apply it to a different area. Have the courage and understand that this is helping your relationship. This is like,
yeah,
you can divorce, you can, or if that's warranted and that's what it ultimately comes down to, or you can fix it if it's fixable by communication.
And the truth is that courage cannot exist without fear. That's just running through things blindly. So if you are feeling fear, that makes sense. And that's actually the first step to experiencing that courage. And so much of the fear that I find, especially with people that have been divorced before, is they don't want to go through that again. And understandably, that is a very valid fear. And the reminder that I always want to share with people is that the fact that you've been hurt this deeply, you can only be hurt as deeply as you have loved. That means you have an immense capacity for love and expansion and that feeling if you've been hurt. Because we don't feel hurt when we break up with somebody we didn't particularly care about.
No, we don't.
But this idea of, to get that level of love again, we have to practice loving like we haven't been hurt before.
That's deep. Melissa, you're going there. That's deep. It's so true. So very true. Well, where can listeners find you if they want to work with you, if they're just curious about you, want to consume your content? What's the best places for everyone to go besides, and then tell me about your book?
Absolutely. So the best place to connect, and I have all my links, is peakperformancelove.com. And then for YouTube, also Peak Performance Love is the handle. And then on Instagram, it is my complicated last name. So it is Melissa Nanavati, Nanavati, which I'm sure will be all linked in the show notes. But I'm on Instagram. Feel free to reach out over DM anytime, questions. I regularly post free Q&As there so that people can just get their quick questions answered. And, again, whether or not working with me directly or consuming the content, whatever that may be, or even if I can refer you to someone that I think is a better fit, I will do that. Because for me, it's so much about finding the right person that speaks the way that really resonates with you and has the life experience that can support you best. And my mission, regardless of that's working with me or not, is to help people really find and experience the kind of love that can be expanding beyond your wildest dreams.
And then the book. Tell us about the book.
Yes. The book, Peak Performance Love, we are actually just finishing the manuscript as we speak. That will not be coming out until early 2027 because it's a long lead time with publishers. But if you want to get on the pre-order list or anything of that sort, you can always do that through signing up for my email list at peakperformancelove.com.
Awesome. I encourage everyone to check that out and to follow Melissa and to see all the fabulous things. There's so many little good tips that just, they don't seem earth-shattering, but yet we dismiss them and don't think about them. So when you put them into practice, it changes everything. And I really do appreciate you coming on and, telling it to us straight and letting us know, but with such grace and such love. So thank you, Melissa. Oh,
so much for having me on.
I forgot to ask you.
Please.
So, and if you don't know it, tell me later, but I have a Spotify playlist that every guest gives me a song that sort of embodies their journey or where they're at right now. If you had one theme song for yourself, what would it be?
Oof. That is a tough question. I think I've been listening to a lot of binaural beats, so it is something by Barry Goldstein. The name of the song, I'll have to pull it up and see here, but I really love the music that gets us into the right brainwave states to create new neural connections. So if you're somebody that is into binaural beats, I recommend checking out any work by Barry Goldstein. He actually did a lot of the music for Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditations.
All right, I have him up right now, so I'll just put one on as a placeholder. I have the two top ones are Opening Sacred Space and Cosmic Consciousness.
Love it.
I'll put the Cosmic Conscious. It's got 785,000 downloads. We're putting it on the playlist, folks. I'm curious now. I'm going to listen to it when I drive today. Melissa, thank you again so much for coming on. And I encourage everyone, please do go find Melissa in the interwebs and look her up. Thank you again. And you can find us on all your favorite streaming platforms and YouTube. Enjoy your day.